it, so it was good. But man, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, actually.
Yeah,
I'm really
good
happy to
deal.
do.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to getting into your work. It's fascinating stuff. And before we do that, 4 years ago or so, we were trying to figure out this pandemic. How are we going to get through it? It was rather momentous for all of us for different reasons.
Yeah.
How did you survive that time period? And how has it changed the way that you do things now?
Well, for me, it was a serious impact because in that period, I was so to tell the story short, I was in Nigeria in 2018, met somebody there, and which is my wife now, by the way.
Yeah.
But when the pandemic hit, I was still traveling up and down. I was like, as I had a visa from 1 month, I stayed 1 month or whatever. And then at some point, I got my first vaccination here in Belgium, went back to Nigeria, and then we got to know that you couldn't travel anymore if you didn't have two vaccinations. So
Yeah.
I came back to Belgium to get my second one, got my second one, and then they closed everything. So you couldn't fly anymore.
Yeah.
So I was 9 months here without my wife, without my son, 9 months alone.
Wow.
Here in Belgium, yeah, without them. So for me, that had a serious impact. Um, and what I learned about it is that a real human communication is so important. That's the thing I remember and I learned from it. And still now I use it in my talks, in my coaching, and everything actually. But I did it before also in my work, so I knew how important it was. Um, so when people say to me, "Oh, COVID didn't have an impact on me," then I can always say, or they're ignorant or they're stupid because it was something worldwide, and at some level it had to impact you. It's impossible that COVID didn't impact you unless you were living in the jungle in Africa. That's another thing. But yeah, I think it impacted at some level everyone in the world. Yeah.
And that's why after 4 years, I feel like it's the first question I should ask. It's one of
Yeah.
the more momentous things that happen in our lifetimes. And I do hear a lot of people saying that it was a time of refill and recharge and all of this, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that every single aspect of our collective lives, no matter where we were on the planet, were effective. And I think it was one of the very first things that I can remember in my lifetime that
Yeah.
happened to everyone. Because,
Yeah.
sometimes these things like the COVID-18, the SARS, the earlier strands would hit certain places on the planet. But for
True.
this that was so widespread and did so much destruction,
Everyone. Yeah.
yeah,
I always say, okay, some people, especially in America, when you're in America, they say, what did 9/11 do to you, right? And there I got a feeling that also there people say, yeah, but it was also only for Americans, it didn't impact you. And actually that was the same because it impacted the whole world. And
yeah.
people forget that it impacted how the way we fly, our security, our privacy, etc., etc., etc. I think people don't realize what an impact it had for all the world. And for me, that was the same. 9/11 and COVID are a little bit the same for me. It impacted really everyone and at some level. Yeah.
You're totally right. In fact, I was in Europe at the time. I was backpacking. So I flew to Paris on the 4th of September. I made my way to Venice, Italy, and I was in the back of a water taxi. And one of the locals just kept shooting his arms, saying, Nuevo York. And I'm like, are you talking about 93? And I cut myself off from communicating. I just got into travel. So when I
Yeah.
called home, my dad was born in Brooklyn. He was from New York. He was like, one of the towers is getting ready to fall. And I had just seen it in 95. I stood between them and I was like, how can that happen? They're massive structures. So
Yeah.
anyway, I remember I felt like I was in an Ernest Hemingway novel after that. He kept saying, hold on to your passport. But I finally made my way to London, flew out of Gatwick when my flight from Paris didn't exist anymore. So lending to what you're saying, everybody was affected. And I remember being in England and everybody saying, what is this? And I had to explain the Taliban, explain that we use Saudi Arabia as a launch site. That really got under the bin Ladens, who were magnates in that area, had a lot of money. So there was, and all of that was playing a role before it even happened, and it affected everyone.
Absolutely. That's why I'm saying somebody who says no, it didn't impact me. It was in America. Let the towers fall. I mean, they don't know what they're saying. They really
Yeah,
don't know. Yeah.
yeah. It's wild. So let's get into your world and what you do as an author and a speaker. So I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, third graders. It's career day. And one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What's your answer?
Well, I can say it in one sentence, I do what a clown does for children with adults.
I love it. I love that.
Yeah, that's in fact what I do. I mean, I do what I have learned clowning for palliative children, how it impact me, how it impact them. I learned a lot from them, and the way I communicate with them, the way I learn to communicate. I do this now with adults, because it you can learn so much of them, and if we start to think as a clown, in the true meaning of the world, then you really can resolve everything. You can it's your personal life will be better, your work life will be better, your business will be, everything will get better because you can put things in another perspective, and that's exactly what the clown does. So yeah.
They what do they say? If you can't laugh, you're going to cry one way or another, you know. So it,
Yeah, I mean, if something happens to you, you have a choice, right? You can start to cry or you can laugh. But it's your choice, and
yeah.
it happened anyway. So if you fall, you can cry, you can lay down, you can do anything, but you can't undo the fall.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
what a lot of people do. They fall and they want to undo the fall. And once you accept that that is not possible anymore, then you can move on.
Yeah.
But most of the people keep on hanging in this fall and saying, "Oh, why did it happen to me?" Or "Oh, I wish it wouldn't happen," etc., etc. So they keep hanging in this short period of fall, and they never stand up actually. And that's what I have learned with these children in my life, and I've started to use it in my life, and saw that it was great, that it helped me in every part of my way, and I'm still doing it now. It doesn't mean that it can't go wrong, because in the past years I have been also fallen down and stay long down, right? But doesn't matter how long you are down, as long as you get up, it's okay.
Yeah. So when you were in the third grade, what did you want to be? What was your dream to grow up and become?
I think I wanted to be a cowboy. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I always ran around with hats and with these fake guns and stuff as a kid, and also my mother at some point. I was 10 years old, and so my mother wanted to have a picture of me, photo shoot, and she took me to the photographer, and she dressed me those nice clothes and stuff. So she brought them. Sorry, she brought this nice clothes, but of course I had my cowboy hat and my shirt as a cowboy. So that's how I arrived at the photographer. And my mom said, "Oh wait, I'm going to put on his clothes." And the photographer said, "No, no, 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 no. I want him like this." So that was a photo shoot of me as a cowboy, as a 10-year
Wow.
old. Yeah, and I still have that picture. The picture, my mom passed away not so long ago. She had that on her room, and I have that now in my house. That picture, so
Wow.
for me of the clown. Yeah.
Wow. What a great memory, man. So take me back to your where you were born and raised. What were the foundational seeds that were planted into you to speak and to write and to give of yourself to help people get to a better place in their lives?
Yeah, so it's a little bit funny. Funny. I mean, I was growing up my mother was a housewife. My father was in construction first, and later he worked in Ford factory here, where I live. And so I had a really traditional childhood. I went to school. I had a happy youth actually. I had a lot of fantasy. I had what maybe you call now ADHD, I think. So I was always busy, very energetic. Um, and at some point, so I went to school, I grew up, I did my study as a teacher, and then it went wrong with me, and maybe it went good in another case. But so what happened was, I studied as a teacher. I started to teach for children, and then I had something like, what's going on here? The structure. How are you guys doing with children? What are you doing? This is not the way. I think it was not creative. I felt very unhappy and I wanted to get out. And my parents thought I was crazy because, in that period, still a teacher still has a good job. It's a steady job. It's fairly well paid. So there's nothing wrong with that. So my parents thought I was crazy that I wanted to get out of it. Especially they thought I was crazy when I told them I want to be a clown. And they said, you can't make your living out of that. Who put this in your head and all these things? But still, I wanted to do that. And at that point, this was like late 80s, beginning 90s. There was no internet. There was nothing like that. There weren't even mobile phones back then. There
Yeah.
was these things, these heavy things with the cord, right? So you were mobile as long as the cord was. um, and I had to look things up in the library, some videotapes, and slowly but surely I learned about clowning. I went to children parties, learned to clown, etc., etc. Until at some point I met a few colleagues. They were also clowning in Belgium, um, and they said, "Hey, there's this really international clown. She's giving. It was a female clown. She's giving a course in Brussels. It's a 2 week course. You should attend because you're good as a clown. Blah blah blah." And so I did that course, and the first day when I came home, I came home crying. I said, "Oh my God, I can't do anything. I'm not a clown. I can't do anything." So I saw the levels then of what clowning was,
Yeah.
and from there on, actually, it went in straight up. I learned a lot of things. I became really good at it, and in let me think, '98. I came in contact with an organization here in Belgium, and they wanted to put clowns in hospitals. But it existed here, but at a small level.
Yeah.
It started in the US with Patch Adams and the whole following. So they were doing it in the US, but not here. And I got the opportunity to perform for children in hospitals. And at some point, so that was for us, that was pioneers work because there was no manual how to do it. So it was with standing up and falling that we learned all these things. And at some point, more hospitals came, the organization grew. We also had a few hospitals where palliative kids were. And nobody of the, we were then 3 or 4 clowns, nobody of the clowns had the guts to do this. And I said, okay, I want to try that. And that made such an impact on me working with these kind of children um, that I thought, there has to be more here. I mean, if you can make a dying child laugh
Yeah.
with this attitude, with this, it's not a skill, it's more like an attitude. It's more like a way of how you in life, how you perceive life. There has to be these things you should use in your real life, not only with these hospital kids. Why don't you use it in your marriage? Why don't you use it as a teacher? Why don't you use it in your business? Why don't you use it as a person? And that was 2010 or something. And then my journey started to bring this thing um, to adults, this mentality, this attitude. That was also the period that I discovered, hey, but I'm not reinventing. I'm not reinventing the well water, or I'm not onto something here. This is something that has been talked about for 1,000 years already. Only I discovered it through clowning, and that was the point that I said, okay, but this is my basic, and I'm going to keep this basic as a clown to do the work I'm doing now. Uh, Not the easiest way, because a lot of people raise an eyebrow if you say, yeah, I'm a clown and I do things with adults that I do with children, and they don't understand it. So a lot of my work is um, explaining things.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sure.
Because I know that I'm right and I know that I can help a lot of people. It's only the way that I have to bring it to them that's difficult. You know, let's say business people, if you say that to business people, they say, no, no, we don't want that. That's not going to help our business, but
Yeah.
it is going to help their business. And to convince them that it is, that's a journey.
Yeah.
So that's the difficulty of my work, actually, to explain people things and how they can do better and where it comes from, apparently. Yeah.
I understand that. In fact, in my 20s, at around the same time, the late 90s, I was in high corporate and I ended up getting out of it and I started working for an organization called the United Way, which is kind of a hub of charitable donations and organizations. They help people. And I became a clown and was going into grade schools and I learned from a senior clown and there was a lot of things about that that was wonderful, but I remember that one day we got in full garb, and I think his name was Jack. He was a guru, and we drove down downtown Kansas City, and all the looks that people were giving us, I thought we were gonna cause accidents. They were just like, "Oh my god," looking over and but I've seen that sparkle in a child's eye, and that's the thing. I always think about one of my favorite poets, Charles Bukowski. We're
Mhm.
born geniuses and buried idiots. The child's brain has no fences, it's unfettered, and it's totally curious and ready to go. There's a strength, there's a courage that we lose when we get older. And that idea of clowning takes you back to that place where you don't have to feel so inhibited. And that's what happens to us as adults.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you can bring back that spark in the eyes of people, yeah, that's unpayable, or how you say it. And especially when people are experience difficulties, to let them know, or to let them see, look, okay, this is a difficulty, and this is the way to get out of it. You know, you can transform it to something else. I always use the story of you know, when they had chemo, these kids, they yeah, their hair fell out, and I always was like, now I was bald, I shaved my head, and the thing I always told them was, hey, it's good thing you're bald. They had like something, because that was, the baldness was something they were not afraid of, ashamed of. They were afraid of it, ashamed, especially. So they wore like these nice bandanas, and they were colored, and that's all fine. But as soon as I came in, I said, "Hey, but it's good to be bold." And they had something like, "Huh?" "Yeah, because you don't need gel, you don't have to worry about a hairdresser, and you're good looking like me." You
Uh-huh.
know, so and most of the kids, they are like, "Oh yeah, we don't need this bandana anymore, right?"
Yeah.
So that's just to make a very bad thing. Suddenly, it became a good thing,
Uh-huh.
and that's also what you could do as an adult. When you encounter a bad thing, you can make a good thing out of it,
Absolutely.
but you have to have the mentality and attitude to do it.
Yeah.
And everybody can do it. It's really simple. And that's I think that's the biggest strength of a clown is, whatever happens, he sees it in another perspective and he plays with it. And you know, the best thing a clown can experience is a bad thing happening to him. And let me explain that. When a clown stumbles, his audience laughs, and that's his intention. So the bad thing that happens to him gives him success.
Yep.
And that's also what you do with somebody that is has a bad time, or is down or whatever. And once you can see through that, once you see that this bad thing could be my success, yeah, then you're in another perspective, and then you look at life different, your business different, your
Yeah.
children, and it's such a relief to see it like that. And every aspect in people's lives, you can look at that. You can look that, which is a serious topic, I know, but still, you can see it in a totally different perspective.
Yeah.
Even I learned, because I lived in Nigeria for long. I told you, um, they look at this. We when that we mourn, we cry. That is something we don't talk about, right? But there, they celebrate life.
Yeah.
See, it's totally different. If you celebrate life, then it becomes a party, and it is a party there. You know, people who die there, they are 80. I went to it's also a funeral. The guy was 90. It was 1 week party at the village. There were
Wow.
comedians coming in, musicians coming in. There was food for the whole village 1 week long.
Wow.
They celebrated his life.
Yeah.
Nobody was sad,
Yeah.
and it's just another mentality. And then when I go to funerals here, but I don't go to funerals here anymore, because I can't see myself going to something like that. I don't see the point of it, because
Yeah.
it's so wrong, how they put things.
Yeah.
My nephew
Wow.
died a week ago, but I didn't go to his funeral because sorry, but
Yeah.
no use.
Wow, that's an amazing perspective because I've heard that before. And I feel like that. You know, I lost a dog a year ago, my favorite dog, and my wife was like, "Why aren't you devastated?" It's like I would be devastated if that animal didn't come into my life. And what a wonderful life it had. I mean, what a wonderful existence. It's like you just celebrate the exuberance, and that's the thing about us being here. It's like
Yeah.
if you make it that long, come on.
And everybody, everybody dies.
Yeah.
Everybody dies.
Uh-huh.
That's the only certainty we have in life.
Yep.
That's the only thing
Yep.
we know for certain. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. So you're in the business of motivating and helping people get to another place.
yeah.
Who has that been for you? Who's been a hero or an inspiration for you?
For me,
Yeah.
my father, and
Yeah.
that's also a funny story. And it has also to do with I can't tell it without being emotional about it. So the they didn't take me serious, right? My parents. So I was a teacher, and I was into it like a long time before I got any money out of it. So I did a job as a waiter in between gigs and stuff. And but at some point I did get money, and things started rolling after like 10 years, 12 years. And at some point I went to my parents and said, "Oh, I'm going to build a house." And then there was like this pause of 5 seconds, and my mother says, did you won the lottery or something? I said, no, I'm earning my money. I'm going to build a house. And at that point, they took me seriously from that point. But also at that point, my father became my biggest fan, right? And he didn't say much, my father was the man of many words. But then he said something like, now you're doing good, Eddie. Now you're getting somewhere. And what was really nice then is that he went two gigs with me to help me carry stuff and stuff. Um, and there was one show he saw it like 500 times, but still then he went sitting behind all the kids in the last row. And sometimes I would look at him, and he was still laughing after 500 times seeing the same joke, right? And so if you ask me who was your example, who was your hero, I think it was my father. No, I'm not thinking. I'm sure it was my father. You know, looking, but I didn't see it at that point. I didn't see it, but now I can see it clearly. He helped me with everything. He supported me. He supported me in not only literally with carrying stuff for me, but he was there and he supported me to do also other things. And by seeing his approval, it motivated me, and I said, okay, now I'm on the good way. Now I'm on the good way. And the the proof that my father supported me was when he died in 2016. I gave everything up. I stopped with everything. I stopped performing. I stopped with everything.
Wow.
And that's for me as a proof that at that point my support fell away, and it's my fault that I didn't have other supports. It's my fault. I should have gotten other people around me. But yeah, that was that at that point.
Yeah.
So marriage broke, everything broke. So there I went really deep. But yeah, my hero is my father. He really is. And the more I look back at it, the more I see what he did and how he did it. And again, he didn't say much. He really was a man of few words. But just looking at him in his eyes, I knew what was going on. And so, yeah, actually, he's my hero. Yeah.
So when you look on your life, everything that you do to help motivate people to get to a better place, you give a lot of yourself, but you have to save some to evolve. What motivates you every day to wake up to do this work, to be who you are and to evolve as a human being?
Um, for me, it's helping people. Because what I see is that people are a little bit lost, and the more, especially young people, the more information they have and get, the more difficult it gets for them. And that's also something that a clown does, is simplify things, right? Um, that's also the no nonsense thing that I have, but that's a clown thing. The clown thing is no nonsense. So I try to simplify it, and I try to be honest also with them. With everything that's going on social media, I'm trying to say, look, there's a lot of info coming to you, but you don't know what's true and not true. And as long as you really don't know if it's true, don't get into it. Just follow what you think you should do, and don't follow what everything says you should do. And that's also something that I always did. I always followed my heart. I followed my passion. With the clowning against everybody's thing, because I came in a small village. They never heard of somebody who went clowning actually. But that's actually why I get up in the morning. If I can help people get to a place where they have a better life, if it's personal, if it's in business, whatever, that's what makes me tick. Yeah.
Yeah. What are you the proudest of? Everything that you've done, achieved, and evolved into and overcome, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
Um, I made a few in the days. I made a few theater shows that now, in that time you're so busy with everything that you go over it. But looking back now, it hasn't been done. Nobody until that day, nobody can do it even. So I'm very proud of it. And I'm a little bit sad that in those days there were no cameras all the way filming it, so I
Yeah.
have very little material of it, a few pictures, and that's all. But I'm really proud of the things I made. They were creative, they were professional, they were educational, and until this day nobody does it. But I realize it now. I didn't really realize it at the time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So, as a writer, what was the first book growing up that you read that really opened up the world to wanting to read more or become a writer yourself?
I must admit, I'm not a reader.
Okay.
Um, but I saw at some point I saw Dead Poet Society with Robin Williams,
Yeah.
and that was the movie that really touched me, and also the actor that kept on touching me during his whole career. Also, what he said, how he thought. Yeah, he was a clown. Huh? He can turn it around in every way you want. He also did the part of Patch Adams, by the way. But
Yeah.
besides that, um, yeah, yeah, and that was also, and he also gave up at some point, and I understand why. You know, that's the flip and the backside of the clown. We know the depth. We know how deep it is at the backside, and that's, I think, why we want to be a light for people. That's why we want to help people, because we know how tough it is for a lot of people. And if we can bring the laughter, it sometimes turns it around. And I think that's the let's say destination of a clown is to make people laugh.
Yeah.
But there's a reason, because clowns understand the difficulty of people. They see through it. They know how hard it is for people on every level. I mean, if you work in a factory, or you have a business, or you're a nurse, doesn't matter. On every level, we see the hardship of people, and we know how we can turn it around. It starts by laughter.
Yeah.
It starts by forgetting some things, and that laughter which give them relief. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you: family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
That's a really good question. My own perspective of me is that people never see who I really am, but it's my fault. It's yeah. They always say that the red nose is the smallest mask in the world, right? That's a name for it, and I think that's really applicable to me. I have this mask in front of me, and I seldom let it down. Um, and I should let it down more, but that's something I seldom do. I only do it with people I 100% trust. Um, So that's a perspective I have for myself. Yeah.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to hire you, get your books, reach out, any of the good business, where's the best place to go to do that?
Just go to my website or LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. Connect with me. We always speak. I mean, I never help. I don't have any programs. That's also what a clown doesn't have. When you visit a child in a hospital, you don't have a show in your mind, or you don't have a magic trick you're gonna do, or a balloon figure you're gonna make. No, you go in empty, neutral, and you need to go in like that because you need to know what's going on with the child. And that's when people come to me, I need to know what they want, what's their problem, where they're coming from. And at that point, the moment I know that, then I can help them. And 99% of the time, they are totally wrong about what's bugging them, or what they need to do to get out of it. And that's my strength.
Yeah.
That's really my strength, is in an hour talk, half an hour, sometimes even 15 minutes, I know exactly what is wrong, and I also know exactly what I need to do to turn around. And that's a gift. It's not a gift. It's a thing I learned. It's a skill I learned during clowning, to yeah, to immediately see the person, to immediately see what's going on. But that's, yeah, 25 years of clowning
It
that did that.
it's interesting talking about clowning and even comedians. I think about Robin Williams and a lot of these guys like George Carlin and all these other people.
Yeah,
The funniest people have the most pain they're dealing with, and it is that notion, like you've said, and that's been kind of the
yeah.
streamline. What a
It's,
wonderful.
it's
No,
like a
go ahead.
muscle. Just it's like a muscle.
Yeah.
The more you can strain a muscle, the bigger it gets. It's
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah, that's totally right. What a wonderful, revealing interview. Thank you for being raw and open. Thank you for your story.
I'm happy to tell my story. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for inviting me. Actually.
Yeah, no, it's been wonderful. Thank you. Keep putting the light in the world. I'm always reassured by humanity, by having these conversations and knowing there's wonderful people out there really doing good work for people, and we need it for sure. Thank you, sir.
My
Take care.
pleasure.